You know, this gamification stuff is not just a fad when the biggest and most successful companies in the world are getting into the game. And our next speaker, Erika Webb, is going to be talking about how Oracle is working on gamifying enterprise applications to enhance its user experience, and she's going to be sharing the results of a brand new design jam that they just wrapped up for the first time today. So let's welcome Erika to the stage. Thanks.
I think is my mic on? It is on. Okay, awesome. So after watching Millionaire, I was like, oh, maybe I should practice my swagger. And then I realized, no, my 15-year-old daughters would go, just stop. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about what we're doing. I have to give you the legal part because Oracle always insists that I tell you that we are not guaranteeing we make any of this. So don't make any purchase decisions. I know you are all going to run out right now and start making some purchase decisions of major Oracle software products. Hold back until we announce it. So, anybody remember this? Kind of cracked us up. We put together, I had to actually cut a video, clip that I had inserted initially because I realized we were going to run short on time if I put it in. But we actually went through and got like a history together of video games. And it was pretty hilarious to have like the various people in the organization, the people who were like, Pong, man, I had a Pong. And the people who were like, that's a game. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about what we did. What we did was just on May 22nd, so this is like really hot off the presses. Like I literally had to ask for extra time to put my presentation together so that we could actually do the design jam. We gathered all our user experience team together in our headquarters at Redwood Shores, just down 101. We had people from the US, from Canada, from Mexico, from India, from Australia, from Ireland. We got them all together and basically put them in a big room and, oh, there we go. And we also invited some extra guests from inside and outside of Oracle to join. So we had about 150 people all together. I would put this in the sort of spectrum of like if you're trying to think of ways to get your organization interested in gamification, you might want to think about, could you run something like this even if it were on a smaller scale? This was the overview. I'll give you a quick background. We divided everybody into teams. Each team got an application flow from an Oracle application, and no one got to work on their own product area. We actually thought that was a pretty critical issue. What I had noticed over time was the more people talked about their own stuff, the more embedded they got in details that are really not actually all that important from a gamification perspective. You know, they wanted to think about how the back end works and how this other thing would work and how there's these other activities going on. And so we basically thought, okay, we want to get everybody fresh. We're going to take them and we're going to make them work on something they've never worked on before. Each flow had a guru that the team could ask some questions of, and each team got a UI toolkit. So we basically gave them everything that they would need to gamify their flows. Although we had a lot of designers available, we didn't want to have people like sitting there trying to figure out. And then to make it fun, we scored people during the day in an app that we created for the event so they could win points, unlock badges, get prizes, because we wanted to gamify the game. We wanted to make the whole design jam activity as much fun as possible. So we wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to kind of play the game. And at the end, we had 3 minutes where the entire org got to vote on what they thought worked. And the way we did it was we gave each of the groups, 15 different groups, got 3 minutes to describe what they did. So, how we got started. In March, I gave an all-hands meeting to kick off the topic of gamification for everybody in the group. You know, what it is, what it isn't, what it means in the enterprise space. And then I stupidly had a meeting with my VP. In that meeting, we talked about motivation, game principles, key ways gamification could work, and that was really going to be it. Except that, like I said, I stupidly went into my VP who said, you know, I was thinking we'd have a worldwide all-hands again soon, and I said, man, I've got a great idea. And really, then I was like, did I say that out loud? Because putting together a big event like this in 2 months was a little intense. So I focused on trying to do things that would not require a lot of additional funding. Our motto for this was we really wanted to lower the bar for acceptance. We wanted to make sure that we put it together in a way that people understood you can start doing this right now. Because what we wanted to avoid was the resistance that people would have of like, oh, okay, well, we can't do that because this is so out of our general area. This is a picture of the day. We got, as I said, everybody together in a giant conference room. You can tell we haven't started yet because all the whiteboards are in the background. But all the people were sitting around. And like I said, we worked on our own Fusion applications. I requested from each of the different groups in the organization an application flow from one of the pillars. So we got human capital management, we got supply chain management, we got CRM apps. You know, we basically tried to mix it up, get a bunch of different apps that seem like really obvious, like a CRM app might seem really obvious, but we also wanted to mix it up with something that might not seem really obvious, like financials. And each flow came with a set of possible business goals for the teams to consider. We basically said, this is what the end user is trying to do, this is what they might be interested in. But they could come up with anything else they wanted. So if they wanted to add additional game mechanics, they were totally welcome to do that. If they wanted to add more business goals or come up with a business goal that we hadn't told them about, that was totally fine too. We just wanted to get people started. So we wanted to give them an idea. And we also, because we are a user experience team, one of the biggest things that we were trying to focus on is how you needed a user profile or a persona to really understand who's using this application, especially if you're not a financials person and you're trying to do a presentation on invoicing. I mean, you're trying to gamify an application for invoicing, you probably need to know a little bit about who an invoice person processor is. So we tried to give them some information about that. And like I said, we were trying to make it fun. So just like Chopped, that's actually one of our picnic baskets. We gave everybody picnic baskets, got brought out to their tables with the secret ingredients in the envelopes. And we actually zip tied these, so they had to figure out a way to get the zip tie open. And we put all the information in envelopes in picnic baskets that the teams got as the game started. There was an application flow printed out. We also had it on a flash drive so they could start working on it. And the team's assignment was to gamify those flows, adding any game mechanics they wanted. So they'd already had an overview of game mechanics, and then we gave them a flow, basically said, do whatever you want with it. Here are the different things. And they had a guru, as I said, to ask questions of. We created a UI toolkit. We wanted people to just have whatever they wanted. You know, it was ready. They could cut and paste it. They could go off-roading if they wanted, but they didn't have a lot of need to if they wanted to use the badges and points and leaderboards that we included in the system. So what are some key points about the game? Each team had to appoint somebody to track the game mechanics they used, because admins were going to come around during the day and say, what have you done? So we had somebody who was in charge of being the communication point. The teams had to create a PowerPoint at the end of the day and save it to a flash drive, because at the end of the day they had to present everything they did in 3 minutes. We had 15 teams. We didn't want to spend a huge amount of time listening to everybody go into long, tedious details, so we gave them 3 minutes to show what they did for scoring. So here's some shots of the design jam. People started getting really focused on, like, well, what would you do? And you could see people were really, like, getting pretty excited about it. They were writing down ideas. They were trying to kind of organize how would we think about this. I have to say, some of the most successful teams, like, really quickly assigned roles. Like, okay, you guys start working on this. We'll be working on this. Well, they decided on it. Our secret sauce to this was we have a rapid prototyping team a dev team actually, that created an app to score the event. Participants didn't know what their team assignments were until they opened an envelope they got at sign-in that had a button. In this case, we had game characters. You had to pick a button out, and that showed you where your team was. So people didn't get to select their teams. We assigned them to teams. And once you found out, you had to run to that table and sign into the app as fast as possible so that you could see how your team performance was going to work. The app itself had badges and points and leaderboards and info boards. And at key points in the day, the teams were scored on the mechanics they employed. As I said, the scores and badges were presented, so the teams had 2 giant screens on the side that were kind of constantly updating and showing how people were doing. We've actually got a provisional patent protection in on the app, but let me show you a little bit about what we did with the app. Granted, most organizations probably creating an app in 2 months is a little ambitious. I would say in our organization it was really ambitious. And they're still speaking to me, which is kind of surprising because I'm sure they were ready to kill me by the end of it. But we created a leaderboard, and when you came in, everybody came in and immediately had to sort of identify themselves, who they were in the organization. Remember, we had people coming in from all over the world, so it was pretty key to us that you pretty quickly came in and identified your skill set. Because I might not know. We have somebody coming in from India who works on a different team. I don't know what they know how to do. We had an admin view. The admin view was we would go around at certain points in the day and we'd say, tell me a little bit about what you guys have done. And then you could give them points for that, or stars in this case, based on what they said they did. So during the day, you might come up and say, well, you've got an idea for badges, but you haven't actually done badges yet. So I'm not going to give you any points for it. I'm going to give you points when I come back the next time. On the other hand, you've got levels in there, and you've done a pretty good job with it, so I'm going to go ahead and give you 4 stars for levels. We also created a whole set of badges. The badges had different meanings, some of which were just important to a UX group. So for example, you'll see the second one on the timeline is usability engineering in the house. And for anybody who's in a UX team, you'd probably be familiar with the line, tell me more about that, which is a pretty typical usability engineering line. And then, like I said, we had the leaderboards where we were showing change and progress during the day, and info boards saying what badges people had won and what they had won them for, including some that were just for the fun of it. So for just for fun, we happened to find out that somebody who was coming, it was his birthday that day, and he was a customer, so we decided we would have a birthday badge, and birthday badge was for anybody in the organization whose birthday happened to be in May, but specifically calling out this guy. We had a giant cake. We had a coffee badge for when you came to a table and discovered they had at least 3 cups of coffee. We had a shoe badge for the most awesome shoes at a table. Surprising how many people tried to go, my shoes are kind of awesome, why am I not getting points for this? So the group got very ambitious. We also had a hacker badge. We had a hacker badge for Jake Kuramoto, if you ever read the Apps Lab. Jake hacked the app midway through because just like yesterday with the retweet me as many times as you can, everybody wants to game the game. So we happened to mention everybody wants to game the game, and he hacked the app and started giving his team all the points they could, all of a sudden we're looking up at the leaderboard going, wait, they have 1,700 points? 200 points was the max. And then there's always someone, right? And then following that, we really kind of wanted to make sure it was a social time. So we had a big cocktail party afterwards so that everybody would have a chance to just sort of interact and mingle. Because one of the things that, I don't know, if you work in a big organization, an all hands can be kind of dry event. You talk to a certain set of people, you maybe don't get to talk to the other people in your org. We wanted to make sure that we ended it with something just for fun. I told you we scored it at the end. We tried to come up with a way that the entire group could decide which one they thought was the best use of gamification, game mechanics. We have a tool that somebody developed in our group actually a while ago, and if you want to think about it more like it's investment scoring. So think of yourself as like now you're in the VC role. You've got $80,000 and you can allocate it however you want to one of these startups. So we had 15 teams initially. You had to decide how you wanted to dole out your money. You could put $80,000 on one scenario, or you could put $10,000 on 8 different scenarios. Second round, we bumped it to 5 teams only, but you got more money. And third round was 5 teams again, but you had only 2 bills to dole out, so you had to pretty quickly come up with how you wanted to do it. And at the end, we had the grand champion winner. Now, the funny thing was, when we initially started, we had the idea that what we were really trying to get people to do is think about how you could gamify Fusion applications. But we didn't say it has to continue to look like Fusion. So the grand champion winner in this case was the World of Workcraft. When they came up, we were like, well, that's pretty good. Why gamify onboarding? Because onboarding is on-boring. They went through and said they had these were their actual slides, so they were spent a good chunk of their time putting together the slides to show us the 3 J's. They wanted to try and figure out how to incentivize managers and motivate employees. So they had 3 J's as join the team, join the culture, and join the journey. Now, the funny thing for us was that their original goal was basically just go in and look at the onboarding process and how you kind of can make sure that the manager knows where their person is. So when you're onboarding a new employee, you have a certain amount of time. You've got to try and get their equipment and their network access and get all these things together. They basically identified that there's actually a different problem in there. It's that managers are so busy trying to get their employee through this maze where they start at one end and the manager's trying to get them to the other end, that by the time the person shows up, everybody's been so focused on, I just need to make sure that there's a computer on your desk the day you start and that your email works, that the person shows up and they have no connection to the rest of the team. So they basically said, we wanted to figure out a way that you could integrate somebody into the team and into the culture. So their game was partly about discovering who does what in the org, picking a mentor, finding, showing what you could do so people would know your skill set, so the day you landed, you'd fit right into the group. So a couple of quick takeaways. The event definitely got awareness and excitement about the possibility of gamification enterprise applications. I have to say we definitely converted some skeptics. We had some people who walked in saying, there's no way. We're not turning Fusion applications into Angry Birds. At the end of the day, they walked away saying, well, actually I kind of see how this would work. Participants did game the game. They will whenever they could. Definitely people were coming up trying to argue that they should get more points, more badges. It was pretty hilarious how some of the least competitive seeming people in the org would be arguing with their admin that they needed more stuff. The group definitely came away with a good sense of the basics of game mechanics and game principles. And really our emphasis, I think it's sort of funny because there's kind of 2 ways people approach this problem. If I go to people higher up in my organization, I say, we need to do gamification. They're like, yeah, that's a big buzzword. We don't care about that. We're Oracle. We really tried to focus on how these are good principles of user experience. What do we know about user experience? Progress is an important thing. Give people some feedback about where they are in this system. Recognize their accomplishments. When they do something right, you want to make sure they know it. That when we really tried to emphasize this is about user experience and usability and it's just packaged a little bit differently, people really kind of came away with, okay, I get that. Participants really understood that one of the key issues was you have to understand your user. If you try and create a first-person shooter game out of financials users are probably not going to love that. If you want to put giant leaderboards on some, tasks in that space, it's really going to probably put people off because they tend to be more introverted. So they really understood that you had to think about what's the user trying to accomplish and what are they motivated by. And basically, that's what I have for today.
So onboarding is onboarding. I smell a best-selling T-shirt coming, Erika. I want to highlight that last point you made about understanding your user or your player. I know we talked a lot about that yesterday at the party, that people have different motivations for participating in these games. So we have time for a question or two right now. If anybody would like, please step to the mic.
Nope, no questions.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Maybe it's not a presentation, but it's about Oracle. If you can answer, what do you think about opportunities for gamification in CRM field? Is it? I know that it's growing, but maybe you have an experience to use it in your customers. And what is your opinion? Is it good, or is it just maybe sometimes?
For CRM in specific?
CRM specific, yes.
What I think is really easy to do with CRM is just that the sales folks who are involved in CRM applications tend to be kind of naturally competitive. So, showing leaderboards, showing points, winning things is actually kind of already built into most models. I mean, if you think about it, you get compensation is partly based on whether you hit your quota. So when you open up any sales app, one of the things you'll see is how close are you? Are you getting ahead, getting behind? How are you doing compared to other people? I think it's just sort of a natural fit for people who are kind of already playing a game with what they do. I think it was more interesting in some ways to see the places where I wouldn't necessarily think that would work as well, how people came up with different ideas about how you could use game mechanics in sort of more unusual cases. But CRM and human capital management are two that I think are just kind of ripe for gamification in general.
Okay, thanks again.